Hello, Gem Hunter. You've probably noticed that when we talk about rubies, we usually think of beautifully cut gems with vivid colors and stunning brilliance. However, nature rarely provides these gems in a cut and polished form. That's why a gemstone hunter must be able to recognize rubies in their raw, uncut state so that they can distinguish this precious gemstone from other similar minerals. To give you an idea, on the left we have a ruby in its raw state, and on the right you can see a polished ruby ready to sell for a few $1,000s. In other words, if you know how to find rubies, you can make a lot of money. But if you wanted to find such a ruby in your area, what would you do to identify it? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. Just like any other gemstone, rubies have their own unique characteristics, and I'm going to reveal each of them to you so that you'll know once and for all if that red stone you found in the wild is a ruby. The first thing you need to understand is that rubies are formed under very specific geological conditions. In theory, all rubies are the mineral corundum, whose color comes from the presence of small amounts of chromium. And although pure corundum is colorless, it is this addition of chromium that gives rubies their characteristic color, which ranges from light pink to deep red. Other colorless corundums, or corundums of other colors, are called sapphires. So if you find rubies, you may end up finding sapphires since they are the same mineral, just different in color. You'll notice throughout the video that rough rubies can vary widely in shape and size. Although their natural shape is that of elongated hexagonal or prismatic crystals, these shapes can be distorted or worn away by wear and tear. So if you are looking for rubies in a riverbed in your area, they are likely to have a more rounded, semi-polished, or broken shape due to friction with other stones in the river. Therefore, to identify a rough ruby, in addition to observing its shape and color, it is crucial to know the typical host rocks of this mineral, as these rocks will provide crucial clues as to the possibility of finding these gems in your region. Because rubies can only form in certain types of rocks, such as metamorphic marble or alkaline basalt, which are the most common host rocks, this further limits the places where these gems can be found naturally. So the presence of fragments of these rocks can be a strong indication of rubies in your area. But what if you want to search for rubies in the wild? Well, the best place for that is rivers. And in this case, the use of complementary techniques becomes indispensable. One of these techniques is to examine the natural inclusions inside the stone. All you need to do is take a flashlight and a magnifying glass and examine your stone for inclusions or imperfections that may look like defects to the untrained eye, but are actually signs of authenticity. If you notice needle-shaped inclusions, don't be alarmed. This is good news. These specific patterns, usually star-shaped, can help distinguish a natural ruby from a synthetic one. You can use an ultraviolet flashlight to identify rubies. That's right, many people who begin their gemstone search may not be familiar with using this tool, but it's incredibly effective and is the same flashlight used to identify real and counterfeit bills. When a ruby is exposed to ultraviolet light, it usually exhibits an intense pink or reddish glow, a characteristic that is particularly useful when searching for rubies in areas where there is a mixture of stones, such as in rivers. In other words, stones that appear ordinary at first glance can reveal their true nature when exposed to UV light, glowing a bright pink and standing out from the surrounding gravel. However, the UV flashlight is not infallible. There are some stones that can react in a similar way under UV light, such as espinella, which can also have a red color. So the next step is to do the hardness test, which is another method often used to verify the authenticity of a gemstone. Rubies and sapphires have a hardness of 9 on the Mohs scale, one of the hardest stones in existence, second only to diamonds. This means that rubies can scratch almost any other material, but are not easily scratched. A simple test with an unglazed porcelain plate can help confirm whether the stone is a ruby or some other less hard material. When the ruby is scratched on the plate, there should be no colored marks, as the color of the ruby is not an inherent part of its chemical structure, but rather the result of chromium impurities. Another important factor in identifying a rough ruby is the analysis of its color. The color of a ruby is one of the main determinants of its value, and the intensity of the red is directly related to the amount of chromium present in the stone. The more chromium, the deeper and more intense the color of the ruby. High-quality rubies, such as the famous pigeon's blood from Myanmar, have a pure, deep red color with no hint of purple or orange. These rubies are extremely valuable, and stones of this color are rare on the market. In other words, if you find one of these stones, you can make a lot of money. However, the color of rubies can vary greatly, ranging from a soft pink to dark red tones with purple undertones. Rubies that are lighter and tend to be pink are less valued, although they are still considered valuable rubies. Since rubies and sapphires are the same mineral, distinguishing between a ruby and a pink sapphire, for example, can be a challenge for the less experienced, as both stones are from the same mineral family. The difference is essentially in the amount of chromium present in a ruby, which is enough to give the stone a red hue, while in a pink sapphire, chromium is present in smaller amounts, resulting in a softer color. In addition to color, transparency is also an important factor in evaluating rubies. Completely transparent rubies are extremely rare, as almost all natural specimens have some degree of inclusions. The most highly valued stones are those that, despite the inclusions, still allow a significant amount of light to pass through, presenting an intense luster. In the jewelry market, translucent or semi-translucent rubies are highly prized for their balance of transparency and vibrant color. Opaque rubies, which do not allow light to pass through them, are less valued, but can still be used in less expensive jewelry. However, there is another way to make money from these gems. Gem cutting is not only an ancient art, but also a highly valued profession in many countries around the world. Like diamonds, rubies are far from their full potential in their rough form. In order for this stone to be used in jewelry, it must undergo a meticulous cutting process. Cutting is an art that aims to maximize the aesthetic potential of each gemstone, bringing out its best qualities such as color, brilliance, and transparency. At the same time, cutting must minimize the appearance of inclusions and other imperfections. Cutting a ruby is a challenging task, as it involves striking a balance between preserving the weight of the stone and achieving a shape that promotes brilliance and color. Each ruby is unique, and the cutter must carefully assess its characteristics before deciding which shape will work best. Ruby's hardness of 9 on the Mohs scale makes it relatively resistant to cutting and polishing, but this also means that the work must be done with precision to avoid damaging the stone. Most natural rubies contain inclusions, and the cutter's job is to choose a shape that minimizes the visibility of these imperfections. While inclusions are a sign of authenticity, they can detract from the beauty of the gem if not handled well. In addition, the ruby must be polished to achieve its smooth, reflective surface. Polishing is crucial as it gives the stone its final luster. This process is done with a polishing wheel coated with abrasive material, such as diamond powder. A well-polished stone reflects light more efficiently, making it more visually appealing and commercially valuable. Once cut and polished, the ruby is ready to be set in jewelry. Some polished rubies can be worth 2 to 10 times more than their rough state. Rubies have a long and fascinating history in the jewelry market. Since ancient times, this stone has been associated with royalty and power. In ancient civilizations such as India and Burma, now Myanmar, ruby was considered a stone of great spiritual and protective power. Kings and warriors often wore rubies in their crowns or as amulets, believing that the stone would bring protection and courage in battle. The famous Mogok region of Myanmar has been the source of the world's most coveted rubies for centuries. Known as pigeon's blood for its pure red color, these rubies are considered the most precious and rare. Throughout history, stones from this region have been used to adorn the crowns of kings and queens and have been the subject of trade disputes between empires. Today, in addition to Myanmar, other important ruby-producing countries include Sri Lanka, Thailand, Afghanistan, and Vietnam. Each of these regions produces rubies with slightly different characteristics, influenced by the types of rocks and local geological processes. For example, rubies from Madagascar are often lighter in color, while those from Thailand tend to be darker with brown undertones. The value of a ruby on the modern market depends on several factors, including its color, clarity, weight, and origin. Rubies with purer colors, such as the famous pigeon's blood, are much more valuable than those with lighter or reddish tones. The presence of inclusions, although common, can reduce the value of a stone, especially if they are large or affect transparency. Compared to other gemstones, rubies occupy a special place. Its value can rival that of diamonds, emeralds, and sapphires, depending on quality. Although ruby is one of the hardest gemstones, second only to diamond, it can still be fragile, especially if it contains significant inclusions. This makes the cutting process even more critical, as the goal is to reduce the risk of breakage while maximizing the brilliance and beauty of the stone. An interesting aspect of rubies is their dichroism. This means that a ruby can show two slightly different colors under different lighting conditions. This effect is more visible in high-quality rubies and can be an indication of authenticity. Synthetic rubies, on the other hand, don't always exhibit this phenomenon, which can be an additional clue to distinguish natural stones from those produced in a laboratory. In the case of precious stones, such as the rubies we've mentioned throughout this video, the value can be astronomical. For example, larger rubies of exceptional purity can be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, underscoring the rarity and prestige of these gems. However, finding a ruby in its natural state is extremely rare, making the search for these gems a real challenge for gemstone hunters and experienced geologists alike. But before we go any further, I'd like to remind you that the search for gemstones should not only be about the financial potential. Being in touch with nature, scouring riverbeds, or exploring mountains in search of gems is a very beneficial therapy for your health. The simple fact of being outdoors, connected to the environment, makes it an incredible way to relieve everyday stress. That's why knowing the characteristics of each mineral, understanding the signs that nature offers, and improving your identification skills can completely change your life. As well as being a fun practice, it can also be quite lucrative if you know where and how to look. Every week I post new videos teaching you everything I know about gemstones, where to find them, and how to identify them. But if you prefer, all this knowledge is organized in one place. You can access the Gemology for Beginners ebook, which is an excellent starting point for deepening your knowledge of the fascinating world of gemstones. You'll find valuable tips that you can apply directly to your adventures. Who knows? Maybe you'll be able to spot rubies, emeralds, and even diamonds in your research, right? Now move on. Remember that every river, mountain, and field can hide a wealth of gems just waiting to be discovered. Who knows when your lucky day will come? I hope you find a life-changing ruby on your next adventure. Thank you for liking and subscribing to our channel. Good luck, Gem Hunter.